search their whole life, trying to find someone that makes your world stay. That special someone you seek could be right in front of you. You gotta open your eyes and open your mind when it's right. But then it hits you like a cocoa storm, taking over you, 'cause love has a way of doing what it do. Chills running down your spine, have you thinking about it all the time. See, I know this time around, love has a different feel for me. I'm so blown away. I'm so blown away. I'm so blown away by your love. So blown away.
You are tuned into WEMS Radio, where we are bringing light back to the industry.
Hello, and welcome to Conversations with Reverend G. It's so great to have you guys join me again tonight. And as you know, I will have different people on different nights talking about different things, and these conversations can go many ways. The idea is to come on and have an open dialogue where we can talk about people's different spiritual journeys, what they're passionate about, how they bring joy to the world. And also one of my favorite topics is around the spiritual toolkit and what you have in your spiritual toolkit. So you can expect a lot of different people from different backgrounds on the show. But tonight, I have a very special guest, Miss Landa Rosa Hernandez. I know Landa from Momentum. We've staffed on a few teams together, and we just spent some great time together these past 90 days. So Landa is a quantum coach. She's also a marathon runner. She does yoga, essential oils, and she's just spiritually enlightened. So tonight, I am sure we will have some great conversations. So now Landa will introduce herself, and she's going to take us on a journey tonight.
Hi, good evening. It's good to be here. As you said, I'm Landa Rosa Hernandez. My family is from Panama, and in this interesting existence, I've stumbled upon a lot of different spiritual remedies that have facilitated me, as Prince would say, getting through this thing called life.
Okay, so would you like to share some of these spiritual remedies with us that you've decided that can support you in getting through life? What would that look like for you? Because sometimes when we talk about our remedies and the things that we use, it supports others in creating a way that they can.
Yeah. So I am a huge Prince fan, and actually Prince played a large role in my spiritual journey. Listening to his music, there was a lot of spirituality in it, and a lot of it that I could relate to. And what I always found fascinating was the way he would express it, whether it was he was talking about Jesus Christ, or he would be talking about the universe or energy or chakras or Akashic records. I always would find it interesting. Then when he would mention something, I would go down that rabbit hole and pursue it further and see what exactly is he talking about. And it would always be something fascinating. Like God, for example, I was raised in a Catholic family. I went to 12 years of Catholic school. And I always say that because of that, I'm not a Catholic. Because what I think what made me resonate with quantum physics was because within Catholicism, I couldn't get answers. I would ask the nuns or the priests or other Catholics' questions. And I was never satisfied with even if I did get a response, I wouldn't always be satisfied with the response. But listening to Prince and understanding things, and actually, the other thing is too, in the Catholic Church, you're not really advised to read scripture. But listening to Prince, I actually started reading scripture and actually started understanding what the scripture said so I could know it for myself and experience Christ and God on a more personal level. And in reading the scriptures is where I discovered that God, in fact, does want to have a very personal relationship with each and every one of us. So that's one of my tools, is the scriptures, because not only is it spiritual, but it's just a great rule book or a great guidebook just to basically live your life by. It's almost, you kind of can't go wrong following things like the golden rule, or do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Life, no matter what you are, whether you're a Christian or a Buddhist or whatever, living your life by those principles, you really can't go wrong by it. So that was one of the things I really enjoyed when I started actually delving into the scriptures myself. And then in college, I took, I can't remember the exact name of it, but I was always fascinated by anything spiritual, always since I was a kid. But I took this course on different world, I think it was called World Religion. And that's where I read the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay, the Hebrew.
And yeah, and in reading that, it was so similar to scripture, and the story between Krishna and Radha was so similar. Even though it was a male and female, it was still very similar to me, at least, how it resonated with me, with Christ and God, that relationship of Christ being the son of God, Radha being Krishna's wife, and then Krishna had his sidekick, like how Christ had John the Baptist. The stories, they're not the same, but they resonate with me in similar fashions, because it was also about war, which the Bible talks about. There's war all throughout the scriptures. But it just, again, it was just a different way of looking at. I think that the Bhagavad Gita was based on something called the Upanishads. And I think those were those ancient wars. And again, I fell into that rabbit hole and started reading about that. And then that kind of led me into yoga, and then the practice of yoga. That was another thing too, is aside from just doing the physical exercises of yoga, the spirituality of it, when you think of the poses and how they relate to the different parts of the body and the different senses. And again, that's what also brought me to quantum physics, because basically I was always curious about how things work. It wasn't.
I wanted to ask you too about how you got to the quantum physics. I hear you keep bringing it back in. That was another one of those things that you went down the rabbit hole, I would say.
Yeah.
Started to learn a lot about it. And because what came to mind for me is, since you've studied so many things, and I studied a lot of religions too in seminary, so I understand how they all connect, what resonates with you at this time. And since you're a quantum coach, I guess the quantum physics aspect of it all is where you are right currently in your coaching practice.
I would definitely say that. So all of that stuff, the scriptures and the Bhagavad Gita, yoga, was a really great foundation for quantum physics. Quantum physics is the science of matter and basically how things work. And some people will want to fight me on this, because, everybody has different opinions on different things, but how it resonates for me is energy and frequency. And I know you are really big on energy and frequency.
Right.
And what was beautiful is that studying things like this, like I wanted to know, how did Jesus turn water into wine? Because I do believe that he did that. I do believe that these people were capable of doing these things. I do believe in alchemy, that they really can do these things. Now, how do they do it? And that's where the quantum physics come in. I'm trying to think. Prince, I think one of his last albums, there's a song called, I think it's called Find My Way Home. And it's interesting because it's a woman and she's talking to Prince and she's like, I'm talking to you. I forget how she said it, but basically she was like, you're not in your body. She was talking to him through basically frequencies. And that's what kind of pushed me into the quantum rabbit hole, because I'm like, frequencies? Oh, you know, now he's talking, he went from Christ and all this other stuff to now talking about frequencies. And I always thought, how did somebody with such meek beginnings create such a grandiose life? He did something right, and it wasn't an accident. I believe that he really, and that's where the quantum physics comes in, because how I see it is that he really, really aligned himself on the right vibrational frequencies. And there are songs where he talks about, if you want to get higher, you got to dig deep. And he talks about vibrating. He talks about things like that. And that's where the whole quantum thing started. And I just started reading about it. And then as spirit would have it, I started finding things on something called reality transurfing. And that is based on quantum physics. It's based on a Russian physicist, Vadim Zeland. And he is a quantum physicist. And he talks about all of that aligning with the alternate flows. He talks about pendulums, the pendulums that are always going. And it's true. If you're having a really, really bad day and your pendulum is swinging all the way over into the worst parts of your day, what happens? You magnetically are going to attract more of those things. And to me, it made sense. It was rather scientific, because when you really think about it, that really is how things work. So how do we control that? How do we control these pendulums? And that's the quantum physics, is getting that frequency in balance and getting yourself in balance. And again, this is where Buddhism or yoga will come in, because it talks about the yin and the yang. You have to have the negative. You have to have the positive. You know, all these things. And it just blew my mind, because it all just started to make so much sense. And then when I actually started practicing it and using it, it was really quite amazing what I started to discover, that I, like Prince, was able to manifest and create for myself by consciously, intentionally vibrating on particular frequencies.
Yeah, you know, that brings to mind Abraham Hicks, because we Abraham Hicks everything. And as I was thinking about it, I also thought about the law of attraction, when you said if you're on the negative, the more negative you are, the more negative things you will attract. So all of that comes to mind for me also in how you're living your life right now. So really, when I talk about spirituality and religion or whatever, it's about how does it relate to how I'm living my life right in this moment. So when I think about the quantum physics aspect, I think about how would you share that with people so that they understand it and then can incorporate it into their lives? Because you talked a lot about the frequency and vibrations and all of that. What would you say would be one of the key things that people could take away from saying like this quantum physics to support them?
There's so many different aspects. So one of my coaches in particular, it depends. I think it depends on the individual and what the person needs. For example, there's a part in quantum physics called frailing. And frailing is when you give a person what they need in order for you to get what you want. So, for example, and we all know as coaches, if you have a spouse or a difficult parent or a difficult friend or whatever, we might use, and it translates differently, right? You might use something like a love language, right? You have to give that person what they need. And it almost does seem like magic, right? And I know you do it all the time too. What, is this person's love language acts of service? Is this person's love language words of affirmation? Giving that person exactly what they need, and in order for you to get what you want without the person feeling you're not manipulating people. Again, you're working with vibrations and frequencies, because as we know, you can't control another person. Right. We can only control ourselves. So how I sometimes present that would be, what shift do you need to make in yourself in order to achieve what you want? Because at the end of the day, we all need other people, right? We all have to work with no man is an island. And we have to figure out ways to get along with other people and understand other people. And in doing that and understanding where people are coming from, you and I do this all the time. Where is this person coming from? And again, I'm not trying to be all over the place, but when you think about Christ had the ability to relate to anyone. He had the ability to relate to a carpenter, to fishermen. If there were children, he could relate to, if they were people in royalty. And again, if you break that down into quantum physics, it was almost like he would match those frequencies and vibrate on that frequencies. And that's how he could communicate and relate to these people. Because you and I know as coaches, when people feel seen and heard, they're just different. Right. They blossom. They things you get the best out of a person when a person feels seen, heard, and understood. And the thing is for us, those of us who are conscious about it, for us to be able to go there with people.
Whoa. There are just so many things. You said so many things, and so many things that come to my mind. I thought about the fact that you've done marathons, right? And what that must have taken to be able to, the training from finish to end, right? What was that experience like for you?
That was probably one of the top 5 life experiences for me. And I trained for a marathon during a very difficult period of my life. And I chose to train for it because I knew that, I think, again, people are going to want to fight me over it. I think only 2% of the population run marathons. And again, I was always thinking, what do the elite do? What do high achievers, like people who really masters, right? What do masters do differently from the average Joe, per se, that really makes them stand out? And I started running, and I started to get that runner's high. I used to suffer from clinical depression, and I came off my meds, and running was literally a lifesaver. I would just go out for a run, and that runner's high is real. You run, and you do, after a while, you feel really euphoric, feel good. And then, of course, there's the fitness and the health aspects of it. And a young lady at the job I was working at she was a beast. She was a Spartan, a marathon runner, and everybody knew that I ran, that I would go to the gym. And she was doing something for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And I go into this meeting, and it was like to solicit to get other people to join to raise funds for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And as I usually am reluctant to do certain things, just like I was reluctant to be a coach. Everybody's looking at me like, well, you run. Yeah, you should do it. And she promised that she would help me raise the money. So long story short, I committed to it, and they give you a coach. They give you everything that you need. And Renetta, you know me, I had a whole committee. I had an acupuncturist, I had a personal trainer. That's when I really, really got into yoga, because I needed to get my other muscles working. But the thing about running the marathon, and again, I take this back to scripture, that one of my favorite scriptures is about running the race. And the thing that the first person who ran a marathon actually died. So what makes running a marathon a big feat is The body is really not designed to do that. So for you to be able to control your body and yourself to be able to achieve something like that is a major feat. And when you're running and you're training and your muscles are tearing down, and there were times when I'd be running and training by the beach and I would just start crying. And you're listening to music and your muscles are like, please stop. You know, what are you doing? And it's just like, I just have to do this. And I just felt that if I ran that marathon and completed those 26.2 miles, I could literally do anything that I put my mind to. And then came the big day. You know, I had trained. The most I had run, I think, was 22 miles. I had caught a lung infection. All kinds of crazy things happened during my training. And I ran, and I ran, and at one point, there's something called a wall. And it's really interesting because you can relate it to life. You literally, you're running and your body just stops and you just literally hit a wall and your body's like, no mas, I'm done. You can't do it. So there's ways to get around that wall. You know, the mind is so powerful, right? It really is mind over matter. You know, even though your body's like, your muscles are like, what are you doing to me? Your mind has so much more control over it. And I think at about 23 miles, I hit the wall. And I'm out there and I'm begging the people not to take me off the course because I'm only 3 miles away. And I'm like, please don't take me off the course. I can do this. I just, you know, need a minute. And this woman walked with me and she gave me some really great advice. She said, just put your arms. Just when you put your arms, your feet automatically start to move. Girl, just put your way across that finish line.
Oh, wow.
So the mental thing, the fact that this woman, again, she saw me, she understood me, she knew I had hit the wall. So I felt seen and heard. She wasn't going to take me off the course. She was like, you will finish this. She gave me she said, you will complete this race. And then I thought about it. Well, you trained, you did the work. Yeah, just put your arms. And it worked. I putted. It took me a long time. I putted. And then when I finally saw that finish line, I just got this burst of energy. So if you look at the picture of me crossing the finish line, I'm actually smiling and jumping over the finish line. But it's really a great metaphor for life because life really is a marathon. Because you have sprinters, you have like 5K races, 10K races, and then you have the marathon, which is the longest one. And that's where you have all the breakdowns. Your muscles are breaking down, you hit the wall, and what do you do to get back up and get across that finish line? Again, like Princess, to get through this thing called life. What tools are you using? What mental tools are you using? What physical tools? You know, it's amazing the human body, your nourishment, how you eat, how you train, balancing the different muscles. This is why I also had to do weight training along with, and I started doing yoga because I hate stretching. And because I have to think about everything, yoga at least gave me, again, I'm always looking for, I need the why. So yoga at least would explain to me, you know, this pose opens your hip muscles. This pose is good for your calves. This pose is good if you get cramps, you know, in your legs. It would be methodical. So it made sense to me. But again, and it also took me down a different road of not only the physical training, but then I also learned the spiritual aspect of it too. And when you're running, it's a moving meditation. And you're running and you're meditating, and there are times when you see your whole life, you know, everything, you know, your childhood, everything, you're just running and the sweat is dripping and you're just thinking about your whole life and everything you've gone through and where you are right now and what it is right now. And then when they put that medal around your neck, you know, it's like, I've arrived, I did that.
So yeah, that's what I was getting to, like the spiritual aspects of being able to complete that. And you talked about it as like a meditation, and we talk about mindfulness also as different ways to meditate. Mindfulness can be done in anything that you do. And that's one of the spiritual practices that will get you grounded and have you find some kind of peace. So it's interesting to think about getting in that zone, you know, in the marathon and having it be a spiritual moment. So let's now talk about what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of, let's say, religion, spiritual practices that you've explored, right? And you said that once you listened to Prince, you were able to like go down different paths that he has gone down, right? One thing you said that was interesting that stands out for me was that you went through a bout of depression, and now you're not, but you said you went off of all the meds and you started running. So are you saying that there's a connection between and I know that there's a connection for depression between mind, body, and spirit, but for you, what has supported you in moving to a place of not being depressed and feeling really good about life?
Yeah. So running definitely was a major catalyst in that. Because when you think about chemicals and the chemicals in the brain and endorphins, hormones, all that stuff, right? You wonder now, and I'm not debunking, and I'm not saying that people don't have chemical. Please, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying that people don't have legit chemical imbalances or things that they need. I'm not saying anyone should come off of their medication. I am not saying that at all. I'm saying what worked for me was I didn't feel comfortable relying on an external chemical to make me feel good. Again, watching someone as powerful as Prince, again, studying him and studying how he lived his life, I'm like, there is more. I could succumb to it and just choose and say, I have clinical depression and I'm just going to have to take these meds for the rest of my life. Or I could choose joy. Right? As you say, or I could choose, what comes to mind is a great Prince song. He says, I want to play in the sunshine. I want to be free without the help of a margarita or ecstasy. And that's how I used to feel. I said, I just want to play in the sunshine. I want to be free. I didn't want to be tied down to having to take, and I guess my spirit knew that I didn't necessarily need that. Don't get me wrong. The medicines were good for me at the time. And probably without the medication, I wouldn't have been able to think clear enough to get to that point to make more conscious decisions and better choices for my health. So I do believe that the medicine helped me and helped me get to a clearer space where I could help myself. But running in all different forms of exercise, it turns out that they do increase the serotonin levels in your brain. And getting adequate amount of sun and proper nutrients will naturally give you the dopamine and the serotonin that you need for proper mental function and to feel good. And again, when you're working out so much, you look fit, you feel good too, because you look good. You know, you're looking at yourself naked in the mirror like, damn girl, you know, it's there's no downside to it. It's just, I feel that through that, and it was also a mental thing. You know, we always talk about in our coaching choosing, and it was I had to draw a line and say, I don't choose depression. I choose joy. I choose to be happy. I choose to be healthy. I choose to love myself and treat my body and respect it the way it deserves to be respected. Eat the things that are good for it. Do the exercise. Feed my mind with things that are fulfilling. You know, I too was reading Abraham Hicks and Marianne Williamson. I love Don Miguel Ruiz, Eckhart Tolle. I just started really reading all these authors and all these things, along with listening to Prince, of course, and other artists, and finding my own joy.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that, because I think about so many people are suffering right now, right? And aside from just giving everybody pills, what is a way to support the healing of mental illness? You know, what are some of the things that we could share with people and get people to do to support their health mentally? So it's great, and it's interesting that you are able to shift and find those things. And I think it would be great if we could like create some great ways for people, you know, to be able to do that. Because I find that really fascinating. As you were talking, I was also thinking about you use essential oils, right?
I have my stash right here. Just got stash nearby.
You know, as we talk about all the things to support our mind, body, and spirit, you know, in talking to you, I see that you've incorporated a lot of those things into your practices. So what can you share, you know, about essential oils that have supported you thus far in your journey living life?
Yeah, so in my quest for finding, so I believe in holistic healing. That's another rabbit hole that I went down. Lots of rabbit holes. When I had my first son, when he was about 9 months, I got really, really sick. And I'm usually pretty healthy. I got really, really sick. I dropped like 15 pounds. I had the shakes. I was sweating. It turns out I had something called Graves' disease, it was hyperactive thyroid. And what they wanted to do was give me radioactive iodine to kill my thyroid. But if they did that, now this is after I come off meds from depression, I couldn't be on antidepressants while I was pregnant. So I come off of that, and they're like, oh no, we have to give you this radioactive iodine and kill your thyroid. But then you have to take, because you need a thyroid, but then you have to take this other medicine for the rest of your life to simulate a thyroid. And I'm like, no, I just gave that up. I don't want to be tied to a pill. Like, what's going on here? So yeah, I go on the quest. There was a great book called Prescription for Nutritional Healing that I read. And it gives you all different kinds of diets and stuff to eat. I'm digressing a little bit, but I was able to, and I went to a holistic doctor in Virginia, and I was able to balance out my diet. I took the therapy. I did not take the radioactive iodine. I took the therapy and I changed my diet. And I take no medicine now for my thyroid, my TSH. Even the doctors were shocked, because the doctors were like, how did you do that? Because they're quick to give you pills. But I'm sorry, getting back to essential oils, whenever I would get sick, I would read these books or read these things, and I read that. I remember reading about bergamot. And bergamot is a citrus scent, and it uplifts the spirit. So bergamot was one of the first essential oils that I really used to OD on, because it helped with my depression. It's a natural, I don't want to say antidepressants, again, somebody who want to fight me over that.
Somebody come and get you, right?
Somebody gonna want to kill. No, that's not what it is. That's not what it's for. But I learned to inhale them, and I loved it. I started using them, and there are something called the olfactory senses in the brain, and certain scents really do interact with the chemicals in your brain and really do cause different effects. And again, it is science, and it is proven. But bergamot is a citrusy scent, and it is known to give you energy and make you feel more uplifted and more. So on the days when I'm a little blah, I take my bergamot and I'll put it in the diffuser, or I'll rub some on some of my senses, and I'll use it. I also used to suffer from panic attacks. And lavender oil helped me a lot with panic attacks because for the kind of work that I do, if I took a Xanax at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was not getting up at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I had to find an alternative that would calm me down and relieve the anxiety attack, yet I'd still be able to get up and I'd still be up and perky at 9 a.m. to function. And I found that lavender really helped me a lot, really supported me a lot. If I was feeling anxious, I would rub lavender on the bottoms of my feet and inhale it, or maybe put it in a diffuser, and it would bring me down, and I would get a nice rest and then wake up feeling better. And that was the other thing too, is I found all these natural remedies, they do their job and they didn't have the side effects that the medications would have. Like the grogginess or the lethargy that some of the medications would have. The essential oils don't give you those ill side effects.
I think I'm hearing a lot from you about how you healed the different things that were going on with you through holistic, through healing methods, right? And that sounds really good, and it's great to hear that you've been able to use these methods to heal and to bring yourself to where you are today. And I know that there's a lot more information about that now. More and more people are looking to more holistic approaches to healing. The thing that came to my mind about the whole process of healing was when you were saying, you're talking about how the you switched and you're now using this as the holistic medicine. How much do you think that your mind and your beliefs play into the healing and your thinking? So I know a lot about how you think creates, because I think you're a direct reflection of the thoughts that you keep. So the question is around like your beliefs and the healing. What role do you think that they play? Because you talked about the medicine, the holistic, all these different things.
I think it's 90% how you think affects everything. Now, again, don't get me wrong. There are times you need to go to the doctor, and there are times you may need medicine. And don't. However, I do believe. I know every day, even through this whole pandemic, I've been using essential oils. I was out. I had to go. I went out. I took some oregano and I took my immune oils, my immune boosting oils. But I do believe some can be psychosomatic. I believe the brain is so powerful. I don't even think that we're even really using our brains to the capacity that they can be used. So when you ask how much do I think your thinking has to do with it, I think thinking is at least 90% of it. I know every day, it's interesting because every day I wake up and I really do. I say I am the epitome of health. I really do get up and say I am the epitome of health. I'm vitality and health and wellness, and I you know me, I rarely get sick. So I really do think that the way you think, if you think of yourself as a healthy, whole, strong person, that has a lot to do with it. But I mean, you also can't just think that you're healthy and then you want to eat, I don't know, Kit Kats all day and really think that you're still going to be, you're going to be J-Lo eating, Kit Kats all day and just thinking that, you're healthy. But yes, mind is huge.
Yeah, it is, because I always think about that, like what you think and how you think about things is really important to how life shows up for you. I'm going to throw in here. Remember when you wanted to do improv and take a class
Yeah.
on improv, right? So since I'm a comedian,
I want to do
I want
everything. Yeah.
some comedy in here, right? Well, you feel you got some comedy in you, right?
I've been told I'm funny. I make you laugh.
I know we do have a lot of fun. One of the things that I want to also make sure that we bring joy. You know, the thing
Yeah.
about comedy for me is to make people laugh because, as we know, laughter is very healing. And when we look at all the different things on just having a great laugh, right? How important it is to the healing. I would like, that's why I enjoy comedy also, because I laugh all the time. And I think I like to have others feel the joy and use that also as a spiritual practice. Laughter, if we can just laugh a lot, we'll feel a lot better about everything. And then it draws into the more positive things you think, the more positive things will come to you, because you know we always have that experience of going down the negative rabbit hole. It's sort of like if one negative thing happens, then it just builds and builds and builds. And I always say, can you just, in the midst of it all, right, just find one little positive thing. If you could grab one little positive thing in the midst of it all, you'll start to see yourself kind of turn around and come back to that point of peace. And it may not always be easy to find that space. But my whole thing is finding a bit of joy in the midst of it all. Can you find some joy? And that will bring a lot of satisfaction. So that's one of the practices that important to me is bringing joy.
Well, that's an ancient adage, right? Laughter is the best medicine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is, right?
It really is.
And I've seen that it really works because you feel so good after a really, really great laugh. So comedy is important for me in that I can make people laugh and bring that joy. But I can laugh all the time about anything, right? So it's interesting when we think of the different types of spiritual practices. We talk about a spiritual toolkit. I talk about in that we tonight talked about so many different things that can go into that spiritual toolkit. We were talking about what about the whole Ho'oponopono.
Ho'oponopono. Yes, and I
Ho'oponopono. You got it right.
Ho'oponopono. Yes. Ho'oponopono. Yes. I'm telling you, I've discovered so many things. And I just want to add one more thing to what you were saying about comedy. There's a comedian, I forget what his name is, but I was watching like one of those, not an I'm showing my age, a True Hollywood Story, but one of those shows. And he said something really interesting. He said, I always want, when they asked him why he went into comedy, he said, I love to make people smile. He was like, watch, smile and see if you don't feel better. And it's true. And he was like, try it. And it's true. Just the act of smiling and turning your mouth upward, something really does come over you that is a wave of a nice feeling. Like smiles really do shift people. So I couldn't agree with you more about the comedy. But back to the Ho'oponopono. Right. Yeah. That's an ancient Hawaiian practice. That was another one of the rabbit holes that I went down. And boy, have I been using a lot of that lately. But what I love about that, again, that was based on, there was a Japanese psychiatrist in Hawaii. And there was this correctional facility that housed like people who committed the worst, the most heinous crimes. And they brought in this psychiatrist to help these people, these inmates. And what he did was really interesting. The type of therapy that he did is similar to the type of therapy that what we do in Momentum is by healing himself, he was able to heal others. So the whole Oponopono is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And as he was looking through the inmates' files, and he would be reading about these horrible, atrocious acts that these people had done, he would say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And he would go into where he needed forgiveness, where he needed to love, where he needed, and long story short, all the inmates did actually, you could look it up, the inmates really did get healed, and they actually ended up closing down the facility because these inmates actually became whole, and were able to acclimate back into society.
I love it because it's like forgiveness and reconciliation. And when I think about it and I say it, I feel good also because I forgive myself as well as others. So it's a combination of, like you said, it starts with us and then we get to give that back out. And so I really like that because, you know, as we listen to a lot of Abraham Hicks, it's all about us, right? And it's all about who we're being. And, you know, she talks about how we get to create the energy, how we get to be what we would like to have happen. And that's what they teach us in Momentum too, because you get the connection. We always talk about, well, who are you being and who do you get to be? And in standing in that, then that's what you will attract from others. So I like the whole idea of owning my own energy. And you know, you're going to come in contact with all different kinds of energies. But one of the things that I find is important is how to just maintain your own energy and not get drawn into other people's energy. And it's not always easy. You have to walk away sometimes because energy is a strong force. I know I used to go to work every day. I'm prayed up, I'm ready. I walk in and it's just like a cesspool of negativity. So I was just always falling in the hole, right? Then I'd go home and I'd come back every day. But it was just the moment of where that energy was so much. And the only way is to remove yourself. So I know I talk a lot, I preach a lot about you own the energy, you create the energy, but sometimes it's just like too much and you just have to walk away. But it is a great practice that I find is I'm in charge of the energy that I want to be in. If I'm not with your energy and it's not working for me, I get to walk away from that and move on. And it brings to mind the conversation we were having about attachment and non-attachment, and being attached, right? And how do you detach from others? If like you're close, their energy will draw you right in. So what does it look like for people that you're really close to, not to get caught up in their energy? So it's another practice for me too around controlling my environment. So give us your 3 key spiritual practices, because you've talked about a lot of different things tonight, right? So what would you say? She's like, I can't give you 3 tonight, right? Or I could say maybe you give me 4. What would you say, you know, that have worked for you and that you think could support others?
Right now, my top, and it'll always depend on where you are, right? right now, as you know, I'm in the middle of a move and I'm creating my new space. And what the biggest tool I've been using lately is intent.
Intent.
It's setting an intention.
Mm.
What am I going? I had a really super busy day. And it was beautiful because I had 2 appointments, one and this one, and I made them on time, despite all the other kooky stuff that was going on throughout the day. Because I had such a, I mean, again, this is quantum physics. It's like I aligned myself on that frequency. Like I will be home by 7:50 in time to do what I said I was going to do. Mm-hmm. So I find intent really aligns you with that frequency of what it is that you're intentionally creating. Mm-hmm. Because we don't let life happen to us, right? We intend. Right. Life doesn't happen to us. We intend. And again, I think the counterpart to that is accountability. Mm-hmm. Because as you said, we are in charge of our energy. We get to hold our energy. We get to hold ourselves accountable for whatever happens. You know, if something, you know, you have an appointment or you're scheduled to be somewhere or whatever, how do you hold yourself accountable to certain things? Mm-hmm. So where I am right now today would be integrity, accountability, and I do, you know, with the Rona thing, I'm a runner. I love to run. And the Rona thing got me a little, and now it's hot. It's a little too hot to run outside, and I can't go to the gym like I used to. The gym was always a huge release for me, but I do try to get in a few yoga practices a week. I did a great yoga class last Thursday, 45 minutes. And I love it because I pick these classes and I love sharing them with you, right? Because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I picked this class. And guess what? They were talking about this. And it would always be aligned with whatever it was that I needed to create for the day. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it's because, again, once my eyes open in the morning, the first thing I do is set an intention for the day. Mm-hmm. Day is going to be a great day. I am the epitome of health. I am strong. Setting that intention and then holding myself accountable. Okay, for everything that happened today, I'm responsible. I'm holding myself accountable. It's nobody's fault why anything happened. And it's also empowering, right? Mm-hmm. When you just hold yourself accountable like that. Mm-hmm. And people take it different ways because it's not a beat up and it's not blaming myself. It's just really powerfully holding that accountability and holding yourself in integrity, right? And it's just so powerful to just be in that perspective, right? And then, of course, that would be the physical. So the third one would be my yoga practice.
Cool. You know, when you say the Rona, we talk about Corona, and we talk about the Rona in how God, because of Rona, we can't do this, we can't do this. What have you learned from being in lockdown and shut down from the Rona, as we call it?
I have learned that human beings are so resilient. I think it's so amazing how people flipped everything to online, Zoom, and how the world kept going. Mm-hmm. You know, I still did move into my apartment despite a moratorium. I still was able to create what I wanted to create. Thank God I was able to stay employed. I learned that human beings are so creative and so resilient when we choose to be, right? Mm-hmm. We can say, oh my God, it's a pandemic, it's the end of the world, I'm going to die, and crawl up in a corner. Or we could be like, okay, what am I doing today? What are we going to do? Oh, you know what? Oh, we're going to just have to make it online. I started taking my online yoga training, my teacher training, which was one of my goals for 2020. I found the online yoga teacher training. And I just thought it was so brilliant how people were able to still shift and remix. 2020 was the year of the remix. We had to remix everything. Look, you still did your radio show. You know, it didn't stop you. You know, there's really something to it, right? When you think about it, I'm like, nothing can stop you really, even in the middle of a pandemic, with the proper intent. And again, don't come for me. I'm not dismissing people who got sick, or I'm not trying to be dismissive of the severity of what, or disrespectful.
Right. Because some people had a hard time. I got to get my job. I was able to work from home. I did not have to go out of my house. So I can be really grateful for that. Right.
Exactly. So I'm coming at it from a space of gratitude. I'm not dismissing people who really have suffered because of it. You know, I'm not being unsympathetic to people who have lost loved ones or lost. I'm not coming from that space at all. But your question was, what have I learned? And that was the biggest takeaway, was resiliency.
Yeah. And I used to go out a lot and do a lot of things. And I've really been able to translate it to a Zoom. But now I'm doing coloring. I want to do I started making dog food because I was started cooking.
We love it.
So yeah, when you go back to work.
We were like, the Rona did us good. We getting home cooked meals now.
They're pretty excited. So I'm gonna have to keep it up though, right? Once the Rona's over, I'm gonna have to keep making dog food, right? But you become really creative because you're in, and a lot of the different things. I've been writing a lot more, dancing a lot more, just doing a lot of the creative things that I wouldn't necessarily have the time when I'm running from here to there, getting to this place and doing all of these things. So I've appreciated the slowdown, and still being able to just do all of the things that I love doing. So it's really interesting because I never would have thought that I would be comfortable sitting down somewhere, right? And being in the house for this many days. But so it's really interesting because when I think about at this point, you mentioned an intention, right? And I like to, when I hear certain words that jog certain feelings or energy for me, I bring it back around because I totally believe if you set an intention, right, and pay attention to it, but what with grace and ease, I'm all about the grace and ease, right? And then it will happen. So you don't, and I've just learned this now because throughout, I was running and getting, and I was doing a lot. And now I've realized that it just doesn't take all of that at all, right? We do a lot of doing when you can just really set your intention, sit still long enough to know what inspired action you should take, right? And then take that action. And it's just so much easier than with all the running. So I'm really keen on setting an intention. And I like what you said, you could set a daily intention. You could wake up and say, for today, this is going to be my intention. Or you could set something that's further down the line. It's really one of the things that I find that come up for me now is really being in tune with my inner guide, really. And that's that intuition and flowing with the intuition and then moving from that space of knowing. So that's another place that I'm saying that I'm growing and I'm folding because I'm really moving from relying on my inner guides to guide me through. So it's been really, really good talking to you, Miss Landa, today, and with Conversations with Reverend G. I thank you for coming, and I appreciate everything that we talked about today. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Yes, I'm glad. So thank you, everybody. And I will see you again next Monday. Conversations with Reverend G. Have a great week.
I'm dreaming.